Awesome. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Uptown Consortium's fourth virtual panel. Today's panel is part of our ongoing effort to engage with the Uptown community and support small businesses in the neighborhoods of Uptown. And we're so pleased that you could join us all today. We have attendees joining us today from over 35 businesses and organizations. And for today's discussion, we've partnered with the University of Cincinnati to share updates on UC's plan to bring students back to campus for the fall semester. With more than 40,000 students and 15,000 employees, UC has a significant impact on the Uptown neighborhoods and the many businesses around the university. John Seibert, Associate Vice President of Planning, Design, and Construction, and Jamie Accurso, Director of Planning, will discuss when and how students will return to UC this fall as the university continues to adjust its plan to keep students safe, staff, and community safe amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. Before we jump into questions and an overview from our panelists today, I'd like to take a moment to introduce both of our panelists. As Associate Vice President for the University of Cincinnati Planning, Design, and Construction Department, John Seibert creates the vision and oversees its implementation to steward the aesthetic and quality standards of the university's built environment across all campuses, including over 14 million gross square feet of space and 118 facilities spread over 476 acres. Quite the undertaking, John. I'm sure it's a busy time for you all right now. This includes managing the progress of numerous complex construction projects charged with challenging times and financial constraints that ultimately support the Vibrant Urban Research Institute with a $4.2 billion regional economic impact. In her role as Director of Planning, Jamie Accurso supports the University of Cincinnati's academic mission and strategic vision by providing professional guidance for the long-range planning of the physical environment, as well as leveraging space and maximizing utilization. Her planning team offers leadership in campus planning, capital planning, space management, geographic information systems, and building information archives. They support the goals of college units and university departments by collaborating and facilitating to leverage resources and develop plans that support the university's commitment to research, education, and community. Now, before we dive into all the submitted questions from our attendees today, and again, as things are changing with COVID-19, the university is going to be able to provide the best update possible for us today. I would like to kick off by allowing John and Jamie to share highlights around UC's Return to Campus Guide. So I'll let you take it from there, and then we'll get into some questions, John and Jamie.
Brooke, thank you for that introduction. Good afternoon, everybody. Appreciate the Uptown Consortium putting this virtual panel together. I want to share, before we get into the questions, and I really appreciate those questions. We've started to see thematically some similar questions asked, so I thought it'd be helpful if we shared with you the Return to Campus guidelines and some of those highlights, because I think that'll cover a lot of these questions at a high level. All this information and much more can be found online at uc.edu/public health. So the work of over 180 members of campus community, a dozen teams and working groups develop the best practices that you can find there. So if your question isn't specifically answered, you can always go to the website, and chances are you'll find that information there. The guidance recognized needs to be fluid to support evolving and changing circumstances and support the CDC and state guidelines as well. And my thought was that Jamie could share with you, as she was on one of those and is on one of those dozens of committees, and as our subject expert on space and some of the best practices, I'd have her introduce the overall best practices, talk about how we support the academic mission of the campus. I'd talk a little bit about housing, Jamie about dining. I'd finish up with athletics, and that'll cover, I think, 90% of the questions asked. Then we'll work into some of those, Brooke, that you submitted more specifically from our partners on the call. So with that, I will turn it over to Jamie.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We're glad to get this opportunity to talk with you. As we embark on the work that we're doing, we're obviously approaching all of this with the excitement of getting back to our core mission of educating students, but we're also approaching it with caution. And as you guys have probably all noticed in the news recently, things have been changing, and and we're getting additional input that will affect what we do going forward. So we just keep trying to move things forward, but cautiously, and taking into consideration everyone's health and well-being as part of that process. Currently, we are trying, the university is working to bring components of all of our main areas of interest, including research, teaching, administrative and office functions, and auxiliary services back onto campus in some way or form this fall semester. Our current best practices involve, as John mentioned earlier, the following federal, state, and CDC guidelines. And then we are also looking to distribute those amongst our university community, and looking to deans and educators to then look to their specific things that are happening within their units. Look for problematic areas they need support in, and bring those to us, and we support and help them come up with ideas or solutions for things that they think are important to bring back on campus. So a lot of the work that we're doing involves funneling down to those colleges and deans to generate their plans for returning to campus. And then there's a whole process and a whole slew of people who approve each of those things and weigh in on various things in terms of social distancing and safety, public safety, as well as environmental health and safety, and also, you know, the pedagogy conversation, and making sure that we're developing and delivering the best quality content that we can. As John said, we've got all of the information is simply on our website, uc.edu/public health. That's our consolidated place for all of these things, with links to various other specifics. Currently, we have brought some research components back to campus as of June 1st. Some office components have already returned to campus as of July 1st. And then we're making the preparations for the students in the class load right now. Before anyone was returning to campus for the first time, all the people that are back doing any functions on campus have developed a plan for their work areas that has been approved through our system. They've also had online training and about best practices and all the current information, so that they are empowered to look after their own health and well-being as they are back on campus, and to support others in looking out for their individual health and safety too. We are doing standard things that every other business, store, and other places are doing, asking people to do self-health check and on a daily basis before returning to campus, and abide by all guidelines relative to that. If they don't feel well, or if they have any of the indications that you guys have all seen on the Ohio and CDC web pages, we are asking them to stay home. We truly want people to be cautious. We are, in general, asking that all community members are being treated equally, and we're asking that they all wear facial coverings at all times while on campus, unless they're isolated in a private office with a closed door. Obviously, there'll be some exceptions to those things, and those will be looked at by health officials or accessibility issues as they come up. But in general, we are all wearing those. We're asking that people look out for their own spaces. We're actively, like our office, we tried to see what people in the office could do to relieve efforts on our house cleaning staff, so that they could do more substantial or more meaningful sanitizing work. So, you know, we're collecting all of our garbage in a central location to try to pitch in and help out, because I think another one of our approaches is that we're all in this together, and we all have a level of responsibility towards the overall health of campus. Yep, we continue to ask people to abide by all restrictions on travel and any other new restrictions that may come out. In terms of the academic profile, you see our core mission is here to support teaching and learning, and we're committed to providing a safe and healthy environment while delivering the highly respected experiential and co-curricular education that UC is known for. Accordingly, we've planned on an approach to combine face-to-face educating, high flex, and hybrid models of learning. These different types of classes were all developed and supported by the faculty who teach them. Really, it was the deans and the faculty who determined what curriculum really relied heavily on the face-to-face interactions and that ability to interact with the students on that way. And that's how we've determined which classes will be offered face-to-face on campus. There's also some other concepts that have been looked into. How do we engage especially undergraduate students and give them a campus experience and try to bring them into the UC community. The high flex model of instruction allows for people to, students to choose what they're comfortable with and gives them the ability to choose when and how they engage on campus versus online. Then we have hybrid models that might have a component that is online and a component that is face-to-face. And then we have other things that were determined that the curriculum does not suffer by going online. And in some instances, it may actually be enhanced and provide additional tools and support to students to be online completely. So that's our approach in general. And we're watching what's happening as the research components and the office components have come back to campus, and trying to adjust our plans accordingly so that we can continue to support the next phases, which is bringing students back with a move-in date in mid-August and then classes starting on August 24th. Currently, nobody knows exactly what all of that's going to look like and how it'll start to operate, and hopefully everything goes smoothly and people stay healthy, but we are adjusting the schedule so that all classes after Thanksgiving and all instruction up until exams, which are in early December, will take place online following the Thanksgiving break. It's hard talking into the void. Sorry, everyone.
No, thanks, Jamie. I know it's like you're looking at yourself, right?
Yes.
I appreciate all of the information that you provided.
And so against that, on the housing side, I know there were a few questions about that. We are fully booked for the fall on campus, but we have made the following adjustments. We are sticking primarily to doubles and single beds this year. So for example, Daniels Hall, which is traditionally a quad traditional arrangement, will be reduced to doubles this year. Students may also request single rooms. If it's a multi-occupancy room, there's an increased cost for that accommodation, and it's subject to availability, and our demand is good right now. But again, the intent is primarily singles and doubles, and I think you'll see that across the state is what our peer institutions are doing as well. If a student residing in UC housing becomes symptomatic or test positive, the university has retained vacant single occupancy rooms with private bathrooms to allow for quarantining, and would be supported by housing, student affairs, and health and safety to provide isolation, meal delivery, medical care, and other support services as needed. So we have set aside on campus and have not booked a number of beds to be able to accommodate that as well. And so the result will be where we typically have about 7,500 beds available, we will be at 6,900 to make those accommodations for the start of the fall semester. So we will have that full complement of students on campus. Related to that, on move-in, there were questions about the move-in process. The process has been adjusted to be contactless as possible. So that means that typically we have students, faculty, and staff that assist with move-in, not this year. So it needs to be done by the student themselves. We're giving some guidance there, and traditionally it was 3 to 5 days for the move-in process. We've extended that and we're scheduling times to spread out that demand, if you will, that glut of people coming to campus over a 10-day period. So starting Friday, August 14th through August 24th, we'll have 10 days where students will be able to come back to university housing, book a time, and move in to their spaces. Jamie, do you want to pick up dining?
Sure. Well, as John points out, we will have a significant number of students that will be living on campus. And so we have to open all the other things to help support that and give them, since they'll be living on campus. So in terms of campus dining, we're taking our cues from the other inventive ways that people have addressed the need to social distance and to reduce contact. So several operations have been moved to a pre-order and carry-out solutions for grab and go as opposed to sit-down dining. There will be some limited opportunities where we can do social distanced in restaurant dining, but those will be minimal and those will have to be evaluated as things progress throughout the first semester. For example, excess TUC food court seating is going to be relocated to the Great Hall in TUC, which allows, if people do want to do a grab and go and they need a place to sit and eat it between classes, there's places like that we were able to get greater social distancing around the seating and give them a place to sit and enjoy their study or whatever else. The Catskeller will not do in-house dining, but will, provide things to go and on an order basis. As you may know, we use an outside group that supports these services, and Aramark is that vendor currently, and Aramark will be maintaining their own safety protocols with their employees, and will report back to the university on those things. As with everything else, we'll be doing a lot of increased sanitizing, cleaning, and making available the tools for people to supplement and do that for themselves if they come into a place where they don't know when the last time it was sanitized or cleaned. So we're really about empowering people to make good decisions and maintain their own health and safety as well. On athletics.
Yep, and Brooke, we had a few questions about fall sports and Bearcat football in particular, which I'm excited, hopefully, to see that come to fruition here at some point. Athletics has begun a multi-phase approach to returning student athletes to campus, practice and competition, and the football team was the first group that came in small pods with the goal of having the entire team on campus by the end of June, which they successfully did. Their return followed UC's protocols that we mentioned prior and gave us really good knowledge to ensure the rest of the athletes returning and the students to come to campus to give us some lessons learned on how to go about that. Following a multiple-day check-in process, following those procedures, the athletes' annual routine medical exams, which included COVID testing. The football student athletes have been released to begin to practice in small groups, doing voluntary workouts under staff supervision. And additional athletes are now starting to return to campus with the help of athletics medical staff, the UC health staff. We still continue to look towards the American Athletic Conference and the NCAA to give us some guidance on fall sports based on how football progressed. We at least have those people here now, but no final decision has been made on the fall sports season. So we need to be flexible, obviously, as we look to those national groups to start to give some guidance on what may happen this fall. So I cannot really say that we don't know, frankly, until we hear from them what the fall season is going to look like.
For sure. Well, thank you both for answering many of the questions submitted on a high level in regards to the reopening plan. And as we go through some of these questions, I know that you've answered some within your introductions, but we'll still go through them nonetheless to see if there's anything else that we can add. So John, what can the Uptown community expect this fall in regards to the University of Cincinnati opening for students to return to campus? So I know you really went over that just now, but in terms of, those taking virtual classes, those being on campus, what can we expect as the uptown neighborhoods surrounding the university are definitely affected by the number of people coming back?
Yeah, and Brooke, I was thinking about that more globally, right? As a community, what does that look and feel like? And I think at the end of the day, it's going to feel very similar to what it's typically like, just not as densely populated. With 500 less students in UC housing against the housing off campus with our partners, I think there'll be a good mix of students in Uptown. A lot of them taking their classes, a fair percentage of that remotely or online from their apartment, or from their res hall room. And then the people supporting them. So, the folks that help make their meals and help clean the campus and cut the grass and academically advise and teach as need be, in those labs or those studios where there's some interaction, we'll do so safely with distance and masked. But I think at the end of the day, what you're just going to see overall is just that there'll be fewer people on campus at any given time through the pandemic. I'll use my group as an example. I'm an office of 53, and through the fall, since we don't directly support student directly with services, we're going to continue to work from home for the most part versus those of us that need to come in on any given day to support operations. We do have co-ops out of the programs that come over and work with us during the semester. And we have a max capacity on the floor because of spacing and safety of no more than 50% of the floor any given day. So I could see Lucy Constantino, my director of graphics, with her 2 student co-ops in here, maybe a couple of days a week. Each one of them are assigned a set space. Usually we have the co-ops in a pod. They'll have their own assigned office. They're responsible for cleaning it, patrolling their trash, doing all those kind of good things, wearing their masks, doing their morning health checks, using those sanitation stations to wipe down. And they'll come in and they'll do their co-op, part of it here and part of it from their computer at home with Lucy's guidance. And so I think that's what you'll see as a community is masks on and being conscious of maintaining distance from folks and being respectful. Just a few less people maybe.
Absolutely. And you actually answered a question we had submitted while on the call. Someone has asked, do either of the panelists know if federal work-study students and student interns will be allowed to work on site and or on off-campus jobs? So like you said, you'll still have co-ops and interns. I'm not sure if either of you know exactly on the federal work-study. We might have to get that answered at another
Yeah,
point.
I can't speak to that one specifically. I just know for the co-ops that we have coming over from DAP that we have arranged with them ahead of time to follow our protocol and to be able to work with us this fall.
Absolutely. And Jamie, I know you both spoke to UC's overarching reopening plan, and you mentioned start dates in regards to move-in and classes. Are there any other dates that you could provide, as many of our attendees on the call today are businesses or organizations that are looking to possibly provide specials as students are moving in and seeing what opportunity lies there? So if you could provide some dates around that too.
Yeah, the move-in, as John said earlier, is going to be expanded to be a 2-week period to give families a little more grace around that and not such a congested, because I live in Clifton as well, so we all know what Clifton turns into around the move-in date, and it gets very congested. So expanding that's supposed to start August 14th. I mean, there's a real possibility that other families might come in and be checking out, just how things are around campus prior to that. About that date, you should expect to see some activity. And then classes officially start then on August 24th. I actually did not look up the date for Thanksgiving break, but once we're just dismissing students for Thanksgiving break, you might start to see a decline in the population on campus, since everything else would be handled online from then to the end of the semester, which is, I think exams are the first week of December.
So Thanksgiving on really through winter break until they were to come back in the spring.
Yeah, and there's been so much effort. We haven't talked about January that much, but
just trying to get through
this starts in January again. So
absolutely. And John, I know that we've talked a little bit about the surrounding neighborhoods, and that you might not have exact numbers today, but I know you said there'll be about 500 less in terms of occupancy for dorms. Can you share any insight on the number of students expected to return for in-person classes versus virtual, and I know it's probably difficult to track in terms of off-campus housing, but really who's coming in person versus virtual.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, right now we're looking to book 6,900 beds, and not being in the housing office, I can't speak to the exact number, but that's the planned occupancy for the fall as far as students housing in with UC. So I would think that's a pretty good number to give you an idea of representative what we'll have on campus. Um, as far as online versus in person, Jamie's a bit more in touch with this, but speculatively, I think 65% of this is being done exclusively online versus 15 or so percent in some type of a hybrid format. And then the balance is distance, safe, face-to-face. And that's, again, primarily focuses around research, studios, performances, things that require you to have hands-on as part of that outcome, that learning outcome. So again, each one of those, you have to develop, like I did for my office, your safe plan and submit it to leadership and make sure that you go through the best practices so that we can afford all the tools we can to perform safely. So in a lab, just like my office, making sure you understand how many people can be in a space at any given time to be safe, are the things that they're looking at for that percentage that's going to be still face-to-face, if you will.
Absolutely. Well, it sounds like there will be people here in the dorm, so they'll need to eat and get their hair cut, hopefully. So that'll be good for our surrounding businesses. And I know this has been touched on, but Jamie, it seems like virtual learning will be the norm for the first semester. Do you see this continuing beyond?
The feedback we've been getting from faculty and other services that have had to go to an online model, in a rushed format in March, this past March, there's been several things that have come to light that it's been very effective in. And so I do think that there is a future for some of those things. And I think people are trying to be, people across our campus are trying to be really thoughtful about the things that may actually benefit from that model and figure out when to continue that if possible. Because there is something empowering about having that ability to do things remotely. For one example, it's always hard to find a lot of space for students to get advising. And you never know when a conversation along an advising line might go into personal history and other things that can come along with it. So they found it's really been great for students to be able to take those types of calls with an advisor from a location where they know they have privacy or, can do it on their own terms and can schedule it when it works for them and things. So there have been things like that that have been very successful. There's other really content-heavy courses that have benefited from all of the materials that support that being available in different ways online, and the students having all having access to that whenever they need it. So, and pre-recorded, or even if it's recorded at the time it was given, lectures, and being able to go back through those. So there are certainly some benefits. And we really tried to focus on the people who provide those academic experiences to determine which things really needed to exist in which model. And so that really set the stage for those things. So I think that some of these things will probably continue if they're a benefit to students.
Absolutely. It seems to have increased accessibility for some, for sure, to be able to virtually join.
Agreed.
And John, I know we've talked about this with dorms and in terms of spaces on campus such as dining halls, but spatially, as that is both of your areas of expertise, when addressing the 6 feet of social distancing, can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. And so Jamie can really talk in painful detail about the over 900 classrooms that she and her planning team analyzed on campus as part of return to campus. If typically in a classroom with loose furniture and chairs, you're allowed to have 17 square foot per person by the building code, for example, and you're talking about 6 foot distancing, so you need a 6x6 box to walk around in safely. You're talking about 36 square feet, so almost immediately you've cut your classroom capacities in half. So if you want to teach 20 students, you need a space twice as big as you did before with those desks spaced out to be safe, if you will. So, against our ability to teach online or do hybrid with a lot of these classes, the ones that do need to be face-to-face, Jamie needed to analyze and find bigger spaces to be able to accommodate lesser number of seats, if you will. And then as you start to look at how those spaces are arranged or used, it becomes even more challenging with fixed seating, and really even reduces the capacity even more. So we have analyzed hundreds of classrooms. We've advised on what the reduced capacity could be. We've advised on how you may from there ingress and egress. There's, as you walk in all these buildings, facilities is put in appreciably. Terrell stations at the primary entrances. So I was through the other day in a couple of buildings. As you walk in, there's a place to sanitize on the way in. We go into each classroom as a sanitation kit. So almost like if you're at the gym, you can spray down your desk and wipe it down and grab a seat. Between that and masks and reminders, we've got a lot of graphics that we worked on. We can expand on if you'd like, both digitally and physically, to remind people of the safe practices. Wear a mask, wash your hands frequently, do your morning daily health check, and just give them the tools and resources. I feel like we've done a pretty good job of evaluating the spaces that do need to be used, to make sure that they are, and I'm sure all the people on the call that are retail get that as well, right? The stickers on the floor and the signs and the spacing and the queuing, to create a safe circumstance in the classroom as well.
Absolutely. And you rolled into that next question, which is perfect on, we had a question about branded messaging on or off campus, reminding people to wear a mask and social distance. And then similar to when you're visiting a restaurant or a store right now. So Jamie, I don't know if there's anything you want to add or expand on that about the messaging or any branded messaging plans for campus.
Yeah, I mean, it is being branded just so that people know the messages that we're putting out, as an institution, as opposed to, there's a lot of messages out there, and there was a lot of stuff that was kind of done quickly in March that may have altered since then. So that package is there. And honestly, I think we're all aware of the three main ones: keeping our distance, wearing our face coverings, and personal and space cleanliness. And we're really focusing on those because those are the only tried and true tools we've all been given. And then beyond that, giving all the units, whether it's a classroom or an office like ours, giving them a set of tools that they can use, because when they're in their space and they realize that they've got a congestion point or something, they've got this toolkit where they can select graphics that help them convey what they need to convey. And really it's about giving people visual cues to maintain their distance, so that when you get in different spaces of different scale, when you're in wide open, you might lose track of what that 6 foot looks or feels like. And so we're just trying to provide them reminders over and over again so that they can do the best practicing of social distancing that they can do.
Absolutely. And Jamie, are there any new university guidelines for local organizations that might be helping out with move in or being present on campus throughout the fall semester?
So I don't have a specific response to these things. I mean, I would think that we would still try to engage in all of those things, but in the same social distancing manner that we've done everything else. And the expectation would be that if, and we would convey this directly to every group as, we're embarking on these things, but we would expect that people would be willing to, respect the mask. And it, quite honestly, that gets a lot easier right now since it's become mandatory for masks. And I think that line of when and where you should wear a mask has been cleared up a little bit. But if that changes and the university continues to say, we want people wearing face masks on campus, we would expect that the people that we collaborate with are willing to do those things. And in fact, we've had contractors that we work with that might be coming onto campus, and they've asked us to show how we're handling certain things so that they feel safe sending their elevator technician or whatever type of vendor it is, because they're as concerned as we are. So we're working with them as these things come up.
Absolutely. Well, that's good to hear that, hopefully you all and the university can continue to partner with those groups, and again, in a safe and social distancing way. And I know that we have had many questions submitted around sports, and I'm guessing, John, you're not going to have all of the answers, and I know this, and you've kind of touched on this a little bit. But we did have a lot of questions submitted about spectators and how they will be accommodated. And my guess is once you hear about what that looks like for the fall, that'll be decided upon. But if there's anything else you can expand on, I know you talked about sports at the beginning.
Yeah, and frankly, we're still waiting for the AAC and the NCAA to give a bit more guidance. I see Michelle's question and answer here about the Bengals. I'm looking for people that can opt out so they can de-densify and that obviously require masks and some things to be safe for their season. I have not heard anything from athletics yet, so I apologize. I don't have anything definitive to share. I've heard anecdotally, I think maybe it's the Big Ten and a couple other conferences have reduced their schedule to just play an in-conference. So I think it reduces some of their travel, hoteling, and some of their exposure maybe outside of their specific conference. I do not know where UC stands on that, or if there are plans to ask people to opt out of their tickets to be able to distance. I have not heard anything at this time for athletics, and I'm sure they're looking for some guidance to be able to respond in kind. And we would support obviously looking at seating capacities to help them understand whatever that reduction might be if we're given guidance from them.
Absolutely. And I'm sure as a month from now, we'll have more information as things start to open and students return.
Yep. Nope. But the athletes are coming back. I was over at Nippert the other day, and the football team were on small pods practicing down on the field. So I know they're all eager and don't want to lose the season. So they're all here and doing their best to be safe and get ready. So we'll see what happens.
Absolutely. And I know our final question today, and again, there's no perfect answer for this either, but we really appreciate you all answering our community questions and being here to support the surrounding neighborhoods of Uptown. But as we saw in March, is there a plan B if COVID-19 numbers do continue to increase as we look towards the fall?
Yeah, so that committee, Brooke and Jamie, you're more actively involved, so I'd be curious to hear your opinion. But March was definitely not that we weren't preparing, but it was definitely a fire drill and a learning experience. We were lucky that we have an amazing IT team here, and we were able to handle that shift. And it was a big shift to going fully remote in March. And as we've planned the high flex and the hybrid classes against a fair amount being online, I think we're much better postured. And as they prepare that course material, they can flex quickly to a more protected or less protected circumstance, depending upon a decline or immunization against an increase. So I think the plan B is we're now really pliable, and it's just work against the numbers and the guidelines we see. But maybe Jamie can comment further.
Yeah, well, I think our plan A is to be as cautious as possible to try to stave off a need for a plan B as long as possible. So, I mean, with the guidelines that we've done for social distancing, I mean, we've been conservative and try to give people the guidelines. We figured out in some areas where we needed to optimize, we did. But other than that, the overall response has been just very conservative so that we can hold off any big spike. And our hope is that the campus never becomes a hotbed for, the virus and infections. I was going to make a point. Like John was talking about the plan that he did for our office. Quite honestly, in the work that he did, it was pretty savvy in that we could have our whole floor probably populated at 50%, 50% of the people being there. So they're covering all the services that we provide 100% of the time. Obviously that 50% shifts in there, which is a pretty aggressive plan, but I think it's actually still in the conservative zone. So like if we were operating in that way, I still think we're being fairly conservative, but then we've taken it a step further. And if people are able to be effective remotely, we're asking them to continue doing that because we don't want to tempt fate and we don't want, we don't want to stir anything up. So I think that's been our approach, and that's our hope, is that those efforts pay off and that we don't have to go to a drastic plan B, but we continue to look at what things are working well and what things might need to be adjusted if we get there.
Absolutely. Well, I know we're almost at our time, and I so appreciate John and Jamie answering many of the questions we had submitted today and giving an overarching explanation of where the university is now and where you're headed. I also put the link that you both mentioned within the chat, the uc.edu/public health, for anyone that is looking to find more information or read a bit more on what was talked about today. But I want to thank all of our attendees. Again, we had over 35 organizations joining us today, organizations or businesses in the Uptown neighborhoods that are really looking to the university as it reopens this summer. And so I think it's exciting to hear that you all have safe and social distance plans in place, and there will be students back to eat and dine and shop and again get their hair cut and get coffee, and some of the surrounding businesses that have already been developing social distancing best practices. So we really appreciate your time today, and this video is being recorded, so we will send a follow-up brief video to all of our attendees as well. So thank you all for jumping on today. I see we have a thank you from Matt Bourgeois he said thanks for the great information. So thank you all, and I'm going to end the call now, and have a great rest of your afternoon and try to stay dry.
Thanks, Brooke.
Absolutely.
Thank you.